I want to take you now to Lebanon, to Beirut, in the mid-30s, to my mother's story. My mother lied, betrayed, cheated, and stole. And my mother, as well, broke the rules, fought fiercely for her independence and freedom of choice. At the age of 9 years old, my mother pleaded with her parents to send her to school. And then, when they refused, she said, "Even pigeons go to school." And she pointed at the pigeon fancier. And she said, "If you don't believe me, just look, here is the teacher." But instead of sending her to school, they sent her to a seamstress to learn how to cut and sew. And there, my mother met a boy, a few years older than her, who was a student visiting the dressmaker, who was a relative. He was holding books, and this is what my mother loved. Because although my mother didn't have the chance to go to school, but she used to think of poems, and she used to write them in her mind and recite them always and always. So when she saw these books in his hands, she said, "Please let me look at these books. I want to see how the written word is." And when she saw him dipping the I don't know what you call it in the ink, she said, "Oh, I can't believe that this mere stick could really write. And what are you writing?" And he was telling her that he wrote poetry as well. But at the age of 13, she discovered that her family wanted to marry her off to the husband of her dead sister. But my mother, who was very hard-headed and rebellious, she tried to run away from this marriage. She used so many tricks. She even set rules and conditions. One of them, a whole roasted chicken from the restaurant. "If you get me this chicken, maybe I'll accept to marry my brother-in-law." And they brought her the chicken, and she cried and cried. The other condition was to take a trip to see the movies and watch Laurel and Hardy. And her mother took her to that film. And when she was there, she thought, maybe I should run away. And later she did run away to her relatives in the south, from one village to another. And then she went to her father, who had divorced her mother, and she took refuge at his place. But her father, not knowing that her father had taken 10 golden coins and accepted that she would be marrying off her brother-in-law. So my mother was starved and cursed and beaten, and then she was pushed into that room where her waiting brother-in-law. And since then, she started to feel that that's it. I have to really take life in my hands, although I was forced to marry that man. who twice her age, he was twice her age, but at the same time, he lived for God and afterlife. He was very pious, and he didn't believe in songs like she did, and films. Actually, films educated my mother. She knew about the world through the Egyptian films and songs, etc. And also she learned the word, etc. That's why I said it. She thought she knew now to speak a language, foreign language, because of this word. And now my mother, not wanting to this marriage to stifle her, she started going to the cinema and seeing films until she became an addict. And then she met Muhammad all over again, the boy whom she met the first time at the seamstress. Muhammad now is at the university studying. When he saw my mother, he fell in love with her again, and they started their love life and relationship in secret. My mother tried to see him regardless, few hours a day, regardless of the restrictions. And she managed to live two separate lives. A life with her husband, and oh, I forgot to say that at the age of 15, she gave birth to my sister, and after years I was born. After 5 years, I was born. So my mother saw Muhammad after she had the two daughters, and she tried to have a balance between her love life and her family. And in fact, she couldn't at all, because this love was taking her beyond the household, beyond all this chores and works at home and everything. So in a way, she tried to see Muhammad, but in a way that nobody would guess that she had a lover, but in a tiny neighborhood, her secret was revealed, and it scandalized the family, and not only the family, the neighborhood as well. And she remembered, my mother remembered one time she was walking by, and the shopkeeper said, there are 3 things one cannot hide: falling in love, pregnancy, and riding on a camel. When her secret was revealed, her family started to watch her everywhere, wherever, and she wasn't allowed to go outside without a chaperone, outside the home without a chaperone. And she was watched like a hawk, and yet she maintained this relationship, and she could always invent so many excuses and go and see her lover. 9 years later, she gathered the courage and divorced my father and left home and scandalized the family all over again. And she was ostracized. The family stopped talking to her. All her friends, even the women who were helping her to read Muhammad's letter for her, because being illiterate, she couldn't read his letters, and she would go to a woman or to a friend in the neighborhood or in another neighborhood, and she would ask this woman secretly to read the letters. Here they are. These have to go later, to come later, because I have to talk to them about them later. But here they are. They went to everywhere, to the mountains, to the sea, away from everybody else. And she used to take us some time with her, not knowing what was going on. So later, when she divorced my father and married Muhammad and lived with him, she bore 5 children. Although, of course, my mother was victorious that she could manage really to marry the man she loved and to divorce my father. But at the same time, I would be belittling her if I said this was a source of her independence. No, my mother fought many other battles because Muhammad died, left her another 5 children, and he left her to struggle with them. And she found herself fighting the Sharia court and fighting male-dominated culture. For example, they appointed a guardian for her children. The Sharia court didn't think that she should be the guardian, so they appointed a male from Muhammad's family as a guardian. And my mother fought that. She was going every single day to the Sharia court saying, no, I have to be the guardian. And when she lost hope, she took her beautiful brother's wife, who had beautiful green eyes. And then while my mother was crying to the religious sheikh, explaining her situation, her brother's wife was fluttering her eyes at the sheikh, who immediately signed the papers, and my mother became the guardian. My mother actually was very, she was funny, and she was living with laughter and making jokes all the time. And I remember one time she fished out in her handbag for a photo of her father and gave it to the taxi driver, saying, well, because she didn't have enough money to give him, she said, why don't you take a picture of my father, you know, instead of the money. My father comes from a respected family. And the driver told her, well, how am I going to educate my children and get bread and butter with your father's photograph? And there were so many creditors. She always ran away from creditors. And they used to come to the house, and she would hide either under the sofa or in the bathroom, everywhere. And one time she couldn't hide in time, so she hid behind a curtain, and only the smoke of her cigarette gave her away. Lovely mother. Anyway, she also during the Lebanese civil war, she had to go and visit one of her children in one of her children in the States, and then she got a message that her father died. So she knocked at one of the doors of her American neighbors and said, "You have to cry with me now because my father died." And she couldn't speak English, so the American neighbor didn't know what she was talking about, and she was telling him, "I'm your sister, you should cry. Your father has died. Aren't we all the children of Adam and Eve?" And he thought that she was, of course, asking for butter or water or whatever. Now, I decided, my mother was after me all the time to write about her life story. And not because she left me when I was 7 years old, I didn't want to write about her life story. I was busy with other things. And 7 years ago, she told me, daughter, it hurts so much when I feel that a small lead and wood defeated me. If I knew how to write, I would have written my life story. And this is when I accepted to do that. By doing that, I felt that her story mocks the stereotype, the Western stereotype, when they lump all Arab women in one lump and they feel that they know they're all the same. They pigeonhole Arab women. And I feel also that by telling the story of my mother, the book was published in Arabic first and in the Arab world, and it was, people loved it because they weren't used to read stories about women who really fought the system in the mid-30s and who had a lover and who divorced and who lived the way she wanted. Thank you.